We, the penguins, entered a rally. We hoped that we would...
Of course, the childbirth wasn't my fault.
We saw some other penguins up in a cable car.
They had a pair of binoculars and watched the from afar.
So if you don't want any fuss, pick up those 660 penguins. Don't pick up the ones like us.
You know, I don't get you nerds sometimes. I've seen you complain so many times about nerfing the titties of your favourite cartoon characters, the latest being Lola Bunny. Her boobs are smaller, her boobs are smaller. It's worse now, it's worse now, you hypocrites. You complain about boobs being smaller and complain that they should be bigger, and yet when I announce that I'm getting big anime titties, I start losing subscribers in droves. Anyway, on a somewhat related note, some people have been asking if I'm going to stick with the old pro wrestling, the old indie wrestling that I like to do. Yes, not only do I firmly believe in intergender wrestling, get out of my mouth, I am also still Rise Wrestling's Grand Champion Regent. And I've had this title now for almost a year, and no one's challenged me for it, so it's mine, I guess. It's mine. Electronic Arts may have finally done the smart thing and thrown in the towel on Anthem, but that doesn't mean the AAA game industry has completely given up on trying to push insipid live service products onto us. For example, Marvel's Avengers, against all sensible odds, is still kicking around despite a tepid launch, a player base that bled immediately after launch, a complete lack of audience mindshare, and pretty much all the other problems that have ensured the ruin of multiple bandwagon-hopping live service game-come chores. But it'll be okay. Just like with Evolve, and with Battleborn, and with Anthem, Marvel's Avengers is getting a big relaunch level update that will save it from eroding into obscurity, like Evolve, Battleborn and Anthem did. Marvel's Avengers story is frustratingly all too common. Hell, just check out our last video on Anthem. It's the exact same fucking deal. It's yet another live service game nobody asked for, with muddled and corporately meddled creative direction. Another one with a shameless amount of post-launch monetization, repetitive and unimaginative gameplay, an arbitrary and uninspired loot system, and most importantly, a lack of sustainable audience because people simply aren't clamoring for another shameless, repetitive, unimaginative, arbitrary, uninspired, unsustainable pile of soon-to-be dead service trash. Anyway, developer Crystal Dynamics is going to improve Marvel's Avengers by making it grindier. Huh. Yes, you heard that correctly, you little subs, as Avengers dies on the vine, having launched to the world as a buggy, vapid, visually hideous, mind-numbingly cyclical experience. Crystal Dynamics felt Avengers' biggest problem is that people weren't taking longer to level up. Huh. No, actually, you know what? I agree, actually, definitely. After all, who plays a superhero game to have superpowers? Not me. I like my Hulks more incapable than incredible. Seriously, one of the worst parts of modern AAA games is how they artificially inflate the concept of grinding. Spending hours in a game leveling up or gaining powerful loot at a rate dictated entirely by those making the game, whose making of the game is dictated entirely by some pricks. Publishers mandate grindy games because the longer a player has to spend acquiring power, the longer they're encouraged to stay in a game's ecosystem and, more importantly, economic system. On top of that, more insidious publishers like Ubisoft have copied the mobile market's concept of the time saver, offering microtransactions that allow frustrated players that have been frustrated by the game itself, to skip the grind. The very grind those publishers forced in there and can artificially inflate or deflate at any time. As we're about to see with Avengers. But it's absolutely not about desperately trying to keep current players hooked. No, the developer has far less believable but inherently more idiotic excuses to spray around like so much wet, uncontrollable diarrhea. According to Crystal Dynamics, I shit you not, leveling up a character without grinding for it is overwhelming and confusing. Yes, you heard me. They think leveling up in a video game these days is confusing. Confusing. Maybe in a game without shallow generic skill trees and loot systems basically ripped off of Destiny. But Avengers is a game with shallow generic skill trees and loot systems basically ripped off of Destiny. So I don't see how the concept of leveling up here would confuse anyone. Anyway, according to them, the allegedly quick leveling has led to pacing issues, such as skill points currently being awarded too fast, which may be confusing and overwhelming to newer players. We want each decision to invest in a skill or heroic to be more meaningful. Meaningful? You want something meaningful in your Avengers game? Alright, look mate, have you played it? Have you seen how arbitrarily cut and paste it is in terms of aping all the other loot-based service garbage out there? To the point where it uses that fucking ridiculous mouse-style cursor on consoles that makes menus slower, but I guess is meant to trick us into thinking it's just like Destiny? Have you seen your laughable loot system? The one that's somehow even more generic and creatively lazy than Anthem's? Hate to break it to you, but if you're trying to make the latest AAA service game meaningful, you need to go back in time and start the whole fucking thing again. The new grind is set to kick in when the player is around level 25, and it'll take longer and longer with progress to reach level 50. There is an immediate question here. If this is about not overwhelming and confusing new players, why are you making them grind after they've played enough to not be overwhelmed or confused by how the game works? If you're 25 levels deep into something, you're not thinking, oh, I wish I'd stopped leveling up. I have no idea what to do when that happens. Come the fuck on. I've seen mainstream devs try to push some insultingly limp excuses onto us, but making a game grindier because leveling up is confusing, even if it were true, which it isn't, how is that not the fault of whoever designed a complicated and overwhelming leveling system, which Avengers doesn't have, because it was designed to shovel upgrades at the player as mindlessly as possible. This nonsense is so transparent, it's basically the Hollow Man. Oh yeah, we're not afraid to reference the Hollow Man here on the Jimquisition. Or X vs. Sever. Avengers got forgotten harder than Game of Thrones after it launched, and let's face it, a lot of people were never gonna stick around after they'd done playing their favourite heroes. Not everybody who plays the game for Iron Man will want to play Captain America. Not every Ms. Marvel player is interested in Black Widow. Essentially, Crystal Dynamics doesn't need people playing just long enough to max out their favourites before ditching the game. The quick and dirty fix to that is to make it take longer to try and force players to stick around. A classic case of wanting to raise engagement without raising the actual value. Literally making a game slower and more boring because it's not about having fun with a game, it's about staying engaged with it. These service games don't care about you being entertained, they only care that you log on every day like a good little grinder. They don't care how much they vandalize the gameplay so long as the loop's exploitative enough. The game part of a live service isn't the service part of the equation. You, the loyal, wallet-opening customer, have always been the service. Also, the Xbox and PC versions of Marvel's Avengers are still inherently worth less than the PlayStation version, despite costing the same. It don't have the Spider-Man in it. If it doesn't have the Spider-Man in it, it's literally less content. I take the fall. See that old Epic Games has bought Mediatonic? The Fall Guys people? Ah, fuck. The Sinking City is one of the worst games I've ever liked. It's complete bullshit. It's a glitchy mess, it looks sort of horrid, it's full of unforgivable time wasting, and yet it's absolutely charming in a ridiculous, broken way. Despite the fact the game isn't so much flawed as is a flaw, I kind of adore it and all its silly writing, bizarre scenarios, and the fact you control a KKK member so hard he flips out and then you can kill him a lot. Oh, and tentacles, lots and lots of tentacles. The game wants you to feel the gentle touch of tentacles.
Have you ever felt like this? How strange things happen? Are you going round a twist? Have you ever felt like this? How strange things happen? Are you going round a twist? Well, have you
ask you a
heard
question?
the word about the bird and the spider? It wiggled and wriggled and jiggled inside it. Well, have you ever felt like this? How strange things happen? Are you going round a twist? Have you ever felt like this?
It's a shit game I can't recommend, and yet I genuinely enjoyed my ghastly time with it. I can't tell any of you to buy it. You shouldn't. But God, I don't regret buying it. Sinking City developer Frogwares is known for making entertainingly janky games, but the studio isn't exactly living on easy street at the moment. For one thing, it's been involved in a bitter legal tussle with Sinking City publisher Nacon over distribution rights and royalties. Last year, a court ruled that Frogwares had unlawfully terminated a contract with Nacon, which allowed the publisher to sell the Sinking City on Steam unimpeded. Frogwares has disagreed with this ruling and has been fighting it in a case that it alleges could take years. In the meantime, Nacon has asserted its right to sell the game on PC until it was removed by a DMCA takedown, courtesy of the game's very own developer. The Steam version of The Sinking City was recently delisted from Valve's store at Frogwares' request, with the wild accusation that it's a hacked and pirated copy of the game. But let's be honest, that would make it about as credible as anything else that can get on Steam. Frogwares especially points to the Merciful Madness DLC as evidence of piracy, alleging the content was produced for the Switch post-launch and therefore not part of the version Nacon has the right to sell. Is it nice on that? Frogwares asserts they have the rights to newer versions of the game, such as those it self-publishes on consoles. So if Nacon is selling an equally new version, it must be stolen. I'm hungry as well. Any up-to-date version of the game that Nacon uploads to Steam could not come from us, Frogwares said. The Steam version, by a technicality, is in legal limbo, and instead of working with us on a compromise or waiting for the final trial court verdict, Nacon instead chose to crack a version of the game we rightfully provided to a partner, added DLC they had no rights to whatsoever, and attempted to cover their tracks by removing various watermarks and identifying logos. The publisher hasn't just sat back quietly and has harsh words for the studio. In the past, Frogwares has improperly relied on accusations regarding a lack of payment to refuse delivery of the game on Steam, at which point they tried to unsuccessfully terminate the contract by encouraging the gaming community via Twitter to not buy the game on Steam. Frogwares is once again sabotaging our investments in the game. Nacon has also said that Frogwares is due royalties from the PC version, regardless of this whole kerfuffle. It's a messy situation, and honestly, it looks like neither side is exactly clean-handed. I generally despise game publishers and have seen enough of them at their worst that I can easily believe the worst of them. But Frogwares has been fucking some of this up. The court ruling that they did indeed terminate a contract unlawfully is a really bad way to kick off an argument over rights, and as someone who has been in legal disputes before, I can tell you that any wise counsel would advise against trying to so publicly and obviously mobilise popular support against a legal opponent's sale of your game, much less in a manner that could be presented as obstructing that right to sell, something the court explicitly told Frogwares not to do. The studio's behaviour, whether you agree with the motives or not, could be incredibly self-sabotaging going forward, and in fact may have already given the publisher all the defence it needs. Nonetheless, if Nacon's indeed selling a version of the game Frogwares has sole distribution rights for, well, Well, obviously that's fucked up. It's also sadly not the first time it's happened where a publisher has just decided to sell something it has no rights to. It's not the first time a developer has had to take a game down from Steam because of this. Publishers do often struggle with an entitlement complex, the sense that any version or copy, even past the point of sale, is their sole property. Still, something about this whole situation feels not just messy, but also uncomfortable. Like, it feels like a personal thing that we've been roped into, and it's awkward. I mean, as accusatory and angry as Frogwares has been, Nacon's hardly come off as mature. It was Frogwares that relied on our marketing and promotion teams representing thousands of hours of work and several million euros of investment, Nacon said in one statement. Now that the game has been fully developed and published, largely thanks to Nacon's money and work, Frogwares would like to revise the terms of the contract to their sole advantage. It's easy to play the victim, but all we seek is that Frogwares respect its commitment both in the contract and as demanded by the courts. I mean, these companies sound hurt. Both parties sound genuinely hurt by the other on an emotional level as well as financial. And at the moment, it feels like a row that a couple's having at a dinner party that you don't know very well, but you're there at the party and you've got to sit there quietly looking at your risotto while he has a go at her for what she did at that work do last year. Seriously, I really do, for all of its problems, I really enjoy The Sinking City, and I think it was made by people who really, really gave a shit about the mess they were creating. And pretty much the only thing I care, fuck the corporate side of all of this, the only thing I care about is that the talent that made the game are looked after. They're why the game happened. The publisher can talk about how, this would never have happened without our €1 million of investment and all of that. But that awful, ridiculous game would not have happened without some awfully ridiculous talent. In any case, maybe a relationship counsellor would be a better first step than a court of law, because this is resembling a divorce more than most divorces do.
This is Flick. This is Frank. They teach the time, so you know when it's time for flick flack, flick flack, flick flack, flick flack.
Is a Swiss watch that comes
Flick flack, flick flack is Swiss made.
Well, that does it for another juicy episode of the Jimquisition. Thank you so much for watching, and I've not done it in a while, so let me just say thank you so much to all of the thank you so much to all of the patrons and patrons on Patreon who have supported the show. I don't give out that thanks enough because I always convince myself that I'm going on about it too much, even though I rarely actually mention it on the show. But especially how difficult things are on YouTube and everything, all of that bollocks. The fact that the Patreon support hasn't changed, hasn't dipped whatsoever, even throughout a year as tough as thank you, thank God for me and for